Our next speaker is a very special person from the left coast, but one who knows how to swim upstream. And I'm going to ask Chris O'Hare from New York to come and introduce our next speaker. And a special reason why he's here, because as he'll tell you, but he received special inspiration from Chelene Nightingale. And quite candidly, he's the one who's, when I first asked Chelene if she would come and speak, she had just come off the grueling campaign. She was tired. She was worn out. She just couldn't afford it, a lot of things. But Chris Hare is the one who made it happen. So, Chris, will you come and introduce Chelene?
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for being here. The Constitution Party may be the last best hope for America, and we can't give up the fight. I kind of gave up the fight. I got involved in politics. It was 1976. I fell in love with Ronald Reagan when he was running for president. He didn't win that year, but I worked for him in 80 and 84. I worked for various candidates over the years, and I'm a reformed Republican. And wouldn't go back now because they are the part of the problem every bit as much as the Democrats. Don't let them fool you. But I got, over the course of time, maybe I was in a little too long, I got road weary. I got tired of the fighting. I kind of gave up. I was just like, I lost the energy, I lost the enthusiasm. The fight was kind of beaten out of me, especially living in New York, which is not exactly a capital of people who believe in our Constitution. And last year there was a campaign for Chelene running for governor. And everything she did, I watched her campaign on the net. It was a coast-to-coast campaign in a sense because of the internet. I followed everything she did. She inspired me, and she got me back into the fight. And not only like just in it because it's a responsibility, but the fire is lit in me again. And we need more people like that. You need to pay attention to people like Chelene. And we need more people like her to step up and to be the voice for the people, to inspire other people. Inspire your neighbors who live in another state. And that's why I felt it was really important for her to be here. I was honored that I was able to assist in that. And I'm even more honored. It's one of the proudest moments of my life is to stand up here and introduce Chelene Nightingale.
You said I could take this mic off, correct? You know what? When I say I like freedom, I really mean it. I do not like standing behind a podium. I want freedom at all times. Chris, thank you very much. And I'm just honored. And I'm honored to be here with Jim and Nancy and Gary and everybody here, Howard from the Constitution Party, Daryl, because you are the leaders in this country and you don't even realize it, I believe. But I'm hoping by the time I'm done speaking, you understand that and you go out and you take action. So forgive me for not being in Texas. Literally, the campaign had just ended. I didn't get to thank all of you. I didn't get to personally thank Jim. I didn't personally get to thank Nancy for the beautiful Eternal Vigilance Award. I am humbled, I am honored, and I definitely share that with my campaign team, who are the true unsung heroes of any campaign. Yes, please. I'd also very much like to thank each, how many of you ran a campaign this 2010? Anybody here? Thank you so very much for what you did. Thank you. Because those of you in the Constitution Party, you are the only ones that were out there really spreading a message of truth that America needs to hear. So I applaud you, and I hope that those of you who did not raise your hands, you will consider running for office here in 2012, okay? So also amen, amen, amen. Also forgive me, I don't have the energy I normally have. I was up for 23 hours after sleeping for 2 hours, and I'm gonna blame Mac for this. I had to introduce him the night before in Orange County, and so I got very, very little sleep. So forgive me, but I actually want to. I want to tell you the story of my travel, and it's going to make sense. Oh yeah, no. No, I don't think Don or Michael, my husband, would like that very much. You would. Only you. Only you. We're friends. You'll hear from him later. Be quiet. It's my turn now. I know the last time some of you saw me, by the way, and so good to see many of you that I met in Phoenix. I promise this time, and I'm sorry, Gary, I am not going to be singing any out-of-tune Beatles songs, so if that's what you were waiting for, I'm sorry. Yes, applause. Of course, it's Richard. Anyway, I want to tell you about my plane flight because it's going to make sense when I'm done. First, you're going to be, what is she talking about? What does this have to do with Liberty or her campaign? So I made it to the airport in time. I wasn't an hour early, but I was 45 minutes early in the Burbank airport. That's fine. I mean, you could even show up 20 minutes in the past and get on. No, their computer system was down. So we all had to get in the ticket line. Well, all of us were standing in line. It had to have been half the flight. Well, something else is new, I guess, since even the campaign. Now Homeland Security has this, or Insecurity, has this new law, or rule, that if you're 30 minutes before your flight, the computer shuts off and they can't check you in. So even though we were having computer problems in the self-check, it didn't matter. They didn't matter. It was cut off. So they had to reroute all of us onto a different plane flight. A few hours later, I called Gary and Jim and said, I'm sorry, I won't be in at 4:30, so I missed the executive meeting. My apologies. So we tried to get on that flight, but because of the weather, that flight ended up being canceled. So they had to shuttle us all to LAX. We got to LAX, and that plane flight was also delayed. So they weren't sure if we were going to make our connecting flights or not. But the pilot was pretty sure because of the wind, and he was just not going to conserve fuel, he could get us to our connecting flights. Well, I barely made it. I was one of the last people to board. But, I got here, and thanks to Jim, I think I got to sleep at 3 in the morning. So the reason why I'm telling you that is that it reminded me of how much freedom has been taken away from us. Also, when I was in LAX, and this was something new, I'm a frequent flyer, but I had never seen this before. In LAX, all of a sudden, there's a ton, it's LAX. We're all trying to get onto our flights. All of a sudden, we hear one of the TSAs yell something, and I don't know what he yelled, but it was a drill. They shut off all the machines. They wouldn't let anybody speak. They wouldn't let us breathe, practically. Nothing was happening. I looked around at the people and I thought, who's going to stand up for this? Everybody stood there like sheep, of course, except for me, who had to say something. I'm sorry. If I wouldn't have made it, you would have known why I got arrested. But everybody just stood there. And I thought, how many times as American people have we stood there like sheep? I'm one of them. We just heard from John. All this happened before my time, but some of you were here. Why did you allow this? Why did my generation allow the Patriot Act? Why did my generation allow 9/11? Why is my generation allowing a so-called president who's not qualified? We've all at one time have been sheep. But there was something encouraging about this plane flight all day long, because so many of us were rerouted or delayed or flights canceled. And you know how we always hear in the controlled media how much Americans hate each other, the Democrats are fighting with the Republicans, and there's race wars or whatever? That's not what I saw out there yesterday. What I saw out there were people of all races, colors, creeds, religions, united together in fellowship. We laughed, we hugged. I'm a hugger, as many of you know. There was no animosity. What we did in a time of crisis, the weather, the planes, we banded together. We were united. That encouraged me. And that was the message I wanted to say this morning. I know times seem bleak, but we as Americans, we do love one another. We do have patriotism. We just can't allow them to divide us. We can't let them divide us. For those of us who are Christians here, we need to focus on Him. For those who may not be believers, that's fine. You have your freedom of religion. You need to focus on what the founding fathers. And I usually have my constitution, pocket constitution. It's in my room. I forgot it. Thank you. You need to focus on that. And if we do that, yes, thank you. I have this. This is one of the ones I have. If you have this and the Bible, those are the only two things as people we should be united on, right? Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I've got plenty. Please, trust me. And I read them all the time. And I have Sheriff Richard Mack books too. And I read them all the time. Anyway, so I know Gary wanted me to talk about the campaign. What I saw yesterday, I actually saw in the campaign. Now, there was a heavy, and I mean heavy smear campaign against the Nightingale campaign for governor. We didn't just have the AIP smearing us. We had the GOP smearing us. But as I traveled up and down that state, people didn't care about those smears. What they cared about was the fact that they were losing their freedom. They understood that they were losing it, and they wanted something different. Now, it's true. Gary was right earlier. They asked me to run, and I said no. And I eventually said yes, obviously. And when I did, though, I said, I don't want to be a politician. I'm never going to be a politician. I am part of we, the people. And I said, if I'm going to run this campaign, and I told Jim Clymer this at dinner, I am not going to talk social issues. I am not going to dress like a politician. I'm a political activist. I'm a homeschooling mother. And I'm going to get out there as that individual, speak my mind with my free speech, and if you can accept that, I will run. And he and Larry Brazil and whoever else, Nancy, were you there? They all said, amen, go for it. And I did. And I would get out there, I mean, as a political activist, I would dress in jeans and T-shirts. That's how I began the campaign. And I would have those who had been in politics for a while and marketers, oh, you shouldn't do that. You're never going to win the primary that way. Well, yeah, we did. We won in a political landslide. And why? Because the people knew that I was one of them. They knew that I wasn't getting up there just speaking some mantra that when I got elected, if I got elected, that I was going to turn my back on them. They knew that when I spoke that I meant what I was saying. I was passionate because I believed it, because I lived it. Now, of course, there was a time, I mean, when you're going up against a billionaire candidate who spent the highest amount of money in the entire country in political history, and when you're going up against Governor Moonbeam, I had to kind of step up my act a little bit, thus the close. But I still never changed my message. I always went out there and spoke the truth. So I know some of you want to know, and I've been asked today, why do you think your campaign was successful? Now, according to Gary, we were the highest gubernatorial candidate for the Constitution Party and the AIP. Hi, Don. And that we led the highest amount of votes for the entire ticket in the history of the party. I also know, according to Gary, who is a little biased, that we were the second highest third-party candidate that year. And I've actually had people from other states tell me, you received more votes than the governor who actually won in our state. So I know we were successful. I know that we were. I still have a huge following. I still get thousands and thousands of requests on Facebook, people asking me to run again. Because what they said when I ran was that it gave them hope. Now, as a Christian, I used to quit back. No, he gives you hope. But I'm glad you're letting me be a voice. But they were so distraught. They were so distraught. They wanted something different. They didn't like the two main candidates running. But the number one question I'm always asked is, what made your campaign different? Well, I'm going to kind of summarize it with, and it's going to be a little crude, all right? But my mom, if she had heard me, if she was still alive, she would have washed my mouth out with soap. I don't know where this came from, but the reason why I'm going to repeat it is because I really do think it described our campaign. So I was on the John and Ken show. And for those of you who don't live in California, it is the #1 show, local talk radio show in the entire country. They're the #1 rated in Los Angeles. So John and Ken, if you don't, they talk. I mean, they're something else. And they didn't really, they actually, I found out later, one of them did vote for me. But they battle everything. And when I was on their show, they said, well, you don't have any chance to win. I mean, what makes you different than Schwarzenegger? And of course, that could have been a whole mouthful for me. But they said, what is your character? What is your kind of steel that will make you a good governor? And for some odd reason, and it's a warning, this is, a little R-rated, I said, I have balls of steel. And John and Ken are not known for being silent. For the first time, they were very quiet for about 30 seconds it was silent airtime. And finally, one of them said, well. But that was our campaign. We went out there and we said and did what we wanted, and we spoke the message of the Constitution. My political platforms had nothing to do with social issues. I talked about my #1 issue, because I was a secure border activist, was illegal immigration. But I did it from a Constitution standpoint. #2, I did the water issue in California. I did it from a Constitution standpoint. #3, I did education. Again, I did it from a Constitution standpoint. And the 10th Amendment, and I'm probably the only gubernatorial candidate in the entire country who did it, was part of my platform. And I also made sure with a Glock on my hip that people knew that I was also a 2A advocate. That was the message that I went out there with, was just that. And people would try to trick me up. They'd say, well, you're a Christian, so how you feel about marriage? Oh, I don't believe in it. I knew what they wanted. No. I don't believe marriage belongs in government. That's big government. That's between the couple and God. Then they would try to trip me up, on abortion. Are you pro-choice or pro-life? Well, like Dr. Ron Paul said, it's about limited government. He said this on Judge Napolitano's show. I'm there to protect in limited government life, liberty, and property. When people would hear that, we actually got, believe this or not, we had Green Party voters, Libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, which I now call the Rhino Party. And by the way, I am a recovering Republican. Chelene Nightingale. And of course, AIP. We crossed party lines. We were the only candidate who did it, but that was because I went out there and I talked about liberty. And I want to tell you a couple highlights that gave me encouragement that this party cannot give up on what we're doing. Two of them really highlight this for me. One, I have a really good friend. Maybe some of you might have seen him on Fox News sometimes. His name is Ted Hayes. He's a homeless activist. Some consider him a leader in the black community. He's quite the opposite of the Sharpton and Jackson duo. And he hosted an event, a homeless event during the primary, invited every single gubernatorial candidate. Now this was just for the homeless. Homeless vote too. Registered voters too. I was the only gubernatorial candidate that showed up. They remembered. They all registered in the Constitution Party, AIP that day, all of them, every single one of them. And they would come up and they would hug me and they were crying. I didn't care. I didn't care that they hadn't taken a shower in a week. That didn't matter. These are human beings that need freedom too. And Ted, I love Ted. We've been friends for a very long time. We organized a lot of marches together. And there was the two that really stand out in my mind was this father and son. I don't know where the mother was, don't know. But because he had a child, they did have some shelter, still homeless, and they were Christians. And the happiest people I'd ever met. Isn't that something? They had nothing, but they had faith, and they were the happiest people I'd ever met. Isn't that? You meet people who have everything, and they're just bitter. So on that alone, this is why I'll never forget them. But Ted, this little boy, he was, I think, 4 years old. And he said, hey, little buddy. This is Ted. Ted kind of walks like this. He's like, hey, little buddy. He said, this is my good friend, Chelene. She's running for governor in the Constitution Party. What party are you in? And this little 4-year-old boy looks up and he goes, I'm in the Jesus Party. Isn't that cute? And that right there, because I thought of my little boy. He's 8 years old. None of us know. All of us are in that position now. Look at the economy. There could be a day, all of us, it doesn't matter, we could be homeless. This UN, they're working for a third world country here. The comforts that you have now may not be there tomorrow. That little 4-year-old reminded me that I have a son at home. And that was why I was going to continue to fight. Didn't matter about the smears. I was going to continue to go on. And that was the turning point for me. Gary and Jim don't know this. I wasn't really into the campaign that much at first until that day. That day, something snapped in me, and I was never the same. And I went out there with guts, passion. I didn't care. I went out there on my belief system. The next thing that really got to me is I was a gubernatorial campaign manager for a Libertarian 4 years earlier. His name is Art Olivier. He's also run a VP in the Libertarian Party. Great guy. I actually, with him, went to Aaron Russo's home. And Aaron was really a political, before he passed away, he was my political teacher. Quite a good teacher for those of you who know who he is. If you don't, Freedom to Fascism, look it up. He was a film director in Hollywood. And he was once more liberal, and he became a libertarian. And he introduced me to G. Edward Griffin, the creature from Jekyll Island. He introduced me to, I didn't know Sheriff Richard Mack at the time, but he introduced me to that name. It really was an eye-opening experience meeting Aaron. Anyway, I had this campaign supporter who, so I knew from running Art's campaign, it was really hard in a third party, especially in communist California, the land of fruit and nuts, to get any kind of coverage whatsoever. We actually did get coverage. Of course, they were trying to smear me, but we still got coverage. I was on NBC News, Fox News, even Glenn Beck, believe it or not, towards the end, mentioned our campaign on his radio show. We actually did quite well as far as that went, but we still couldn't quite break it. We had a fervor, but we couldn't kind of get through that door. So one of my campaign supporters is an author and a motivational speaker. He tours the world. He said, Chelene, I've got an idea. He says, you really are passionate about the farmers and the water. Why don't we walk from Fresno to Sacramento? I'm crazy, so I said yes. 200 miles of walking. And for those of you who did follow the campaign, I did end up in a wheelchair, so I'm very empathetic to Carl and others who are in wheelchairs. I was there. I don't know how they do it, to be quite frank. But the last day, I said, I don't care, because my toe was green, literally, and my doctor said, you're going to lose your toe. I'm telling you, you can't walk. The last day, I said, I am not going to go in on a wheelchair. I'm walking. My campaign manager, God, I love her. She's one of my good friends now, Danny. Her and the whole campaign staff. No, Chelene, you can't. We'll wheel you in. No, you don't understand. What is it that I'm thinking of Benjamin Franklin right now. What did he say? There's a few things I'm thinking. Martin Luther King, a lot of different quotes is going on in my head right now. One of them is if you want, comfort or, you want liberty, but you'll for security or comfort, you'll trade that. Well, then you deserve neither. I was thinking of that. I was thinking of Martin Luther King, which I actually introduced Sheriff Richard Mack on. Remember, he said the measure of a good man, or in this case, a woman, is not how you are in times of comfort and convenience, but how you are in times of controversy and challenge. I was just thinking of all these things. Fighting for liberty doesn't mean that it's going to be pain-free. I was there to fight for the people, and I wasn't going to walk into the Capitol in a wheelchair. I wanted to walk. So I did. And I walked faster than everybody else because I was in so much pain that if I stopped, my toes were bleeding. I knew that I wasn't going to get there. I had such fierce determination. That determination wasn't just for me, though. It was for my child, my stepdaughter, my nieces, my nephews, and the children, because I wanted to show them finally a good example of somebody who will take that extra step for liberty. You know, thank you, Chris. You know, I believe it was Thomas Paine who said that we had to fight for liberty now so that our children may have peace later on. So that's why I did it. And during that walk, I'll tell you, I saw visions that we don't see in the media, who does not tell us the truth. I mean, hello, I guess according to the media, the biggest news event in the world is the royal wedding. Yeah, the royal wedding pays my bills and gets me out of the Federal Reserve and protects my borders and gets the drug cartel out of here. Yeah, the royal wedding makes sure that my children have a good education. I mean, we have all this real news going on out here, and that's what they want to show us, fluff. So as I walked that 200 miles, there was one city block in particular that really got to me. First of all, we had people coming up, hugging us. We had people crying, people bringing us water. We even had a homeless guy who knew about me. He had heard about me. He knew I was friends with Ted Hayes. This was clear up in Sacramento. We live in L.A. He came up and gave our campaign $5. We didn't want to take it because he had slipped it into somebody's hand. I'm like, no, give it back to him. He wouldn't. So we paid it forward to a homeless woman with a child that we saw later on. But that was how people were. But in one street block, city block, I think it was Modesto, we saw a foreclosed home, an out of business sign, a vacant building with graffiti on it, and a building with a lease for lease sign. That is America today. That is what they don't want us to know about. We're there because of the Federal Reserve. We're there because they've taken away our freedoms. We're there, though, because we have let them. And that's what I want to address with the Constitution Party here real quickly about today. I believe, of course, there's only one salvation. But when it comes to politics, I believe there's only one party. And that's the Constitution Party. But why aren't we larger than the two UN parties? Why is it that people still to this day, whether they're twitting or coming to me on Facebook or emailing me, Chelene, we need to form a third party? People ask. I'm sorry, but they do. There are people, I know tons of people in the Campaign for Liberty. By the way, just so you know, I want it out there. I don't want you to think I'm hiding anything. I was a Republican, and in 2008, I got a phone call from the Ron Paul campaign. And they said, Ron Paul would like your endorsement. He would like to meet with you. I did meet him, and I did endorse him. Okay, I was not in this party. But in fact, how I heard about your party was when Dr. Paul endorsed Chuck Baldwin. And then that's when I voted for Chuck Baldwin. People don't know about us. And when they do hear, and I'm telling you this up front, and not that this is a bad thing because I'm a Christian, they say, oh, that's the religious party. Nah, we're only interested in liberty and freedom. Jesus had friends of all persuasions. Jesus was friends with Mary Magdalene. It is our job as Christians to witness to others, to bring them to the Jesus party, okay? But it's our job as constitutionalists to bring people to liberty. If we stay divided on our platform, if we stay divided on free of liberty, we're not going to be there for America. I don't want to see this party divided. I want to see this party united. I want this to be the place that people that care about the Constitution and liberty come to. There is no hope in any other party but this one. Right now, there's a fervor in this country for liberty, but instead of coming to this party, what do you think people are doing? They're filing independent. They're not coming here. We're not growing. Gary says I've heard somebody today said you are the most successful in our party state campaign ever in the history of our party. I'm telling you now why I told you these stories, why we were. I didn't talk social issues. Everybody knew I was a Christian because I would talk about Jesus, but all I did in my platforms was talk about the Constitution. I am pleading with you. I'm pleading with you. I mean this. For the sake of my child. Yes, that's selfish, but the sake of my child. The sake of the children, the sake of your grandchildren, your nieces and your nephews, please. We have got to get out there. We have got to have balls of steel, a lot of faith, and we have to shake things up in this country so that people that are disenfranchised with the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, and believe me, they're also disenfranchised with the Libertarian Party, go to a Libertarian meeting and all it is a debate. I mean, I love them, but that's all they do. They don't get things done. We're the party that can and will and should get things done. And remember this, the founding fathers, one of my friends is Michael Bandineric. How many people know Michael Bandineric? Excellent. I just, again, took his class. He's a great Constitution teacher. Again, he's not a Christian, though I'm working on him. But he reminded me a couple of weeks ago, the founding fathers did not all get along. Not all of them were Christians. They fought. In fact, he said they would duke it out. Some would go pray, some would go for some ale. I'm sure Benjamin Franklin was having ale, and over here Thomas Paine was praying. That's what they did. But then they would come together and they would discuss things civilly. Discuss it because they said the most important thing is liberty for all. It doesn't say liberty for some, it says liberty for all. And at the end of the day, we got the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the Articles of the Constitution. The best political, if you want to call it that, the best political document ever written. The best, more perfect union ever created. The best form of government on this planet. But we have lost it. We have lost it to the UN corporation. And the only way we are going to restore it is to get out there united, like all of us were yesterday when we were flying. United. How many here can promise me, no matter what we believe, that at the end of the day we can come together united? Please, be honest. One person's raising their hand. I want to see everybody raise their hand. Because if you don't raise your hand, I'm very disappointed in you. Everybody raise their hand. That's what I expect from this party, that I believe in, that I'm going to stay in, and that I'm going to fight for, and that I'm going to help bring numbers to. Let's stay united for liberty. And trust me, the witnessing and the praying, the rest will follow. And I'm going to end it on this. I love Thomas Paine. How many of you have read Common Sense? It's a great book. Thomas Paine said this: it takes a little matter to move a party. It takes something great to move a nation. So let's make sure that the Constitution Party for Liberty is that something great. Thank you, and God bless you.